Hey, coffee makers. My name is Terry Kalka, and I lead the Department of Defense Cyber Crime Center's cybersecurity engagement with industry. We call that DICE. I have the privilege of leading a team that helps to defend the DoD's data by sharing critical cyber threat intelligence and cybersecurity capabilities with over 1,300 defense industrial base partners. My background, from teaching adult professionals the basics of computing to serving as the senior cyber advisor for the Army CCOM commanding general, to the role I hold now, has always been about actionable collaboration. When I'm not focused on cyber defense, I'm trying to make a little music without breaking any strings. Let's talk about the state of the defense industrial base and how we are in the cyber fight together here on the Cyber Coffee Hour.
All right, what's good, coffee makers, not coffee takers? You are locked into the Cyber Coffee Hour, where we brew up insights and community in the digital world. I'm the People's Chief, Dr. Joseph J. Burt-Miller Jr., with the one and only master cyber farms, Alfredzo B. Nash Jr. We both hail from the legendary streets of Mount Vernon, New York, but we're coming to you live and direct from the DMV area. Our mission is to share knowledge, deepen understanding, and build community across the vast realm of cyberspace. So grab your coffee mug and let's brew. All right, so for today, we'll have a coffee chat with DoD Cyber Crime Center Director of DIB Collaboration, Terry Kalka. Now, Terry Kalka is the Director of the DoD Cyber Crime Center, DC3, DoD Defense Industrial Base, or DIB, Collaboration Information Sharing Environment, or DICE. In this role, he is responsible for sharing cybersecurity threat information, engaging in DIB activities, and providing cybersecurity services to a public-private partnership that supports over 1,300 defense contractors. He has driven improvements and innovations, resulting in increased collaboration, insight, and action for both the DIB and the DoD, as well as a stronger defense of DoD data residing in DIB networks. Before joining DC3, Mr. Kalka held a variety of IT cyber roles in the U.S. Army Communications Electronics Command, or CCOM, culminating in an assignment as a senior cyber professional advisor to the Commanding General. He holds a Master of Science degree in Government Information Leadership from National Defense University and is a Certified Information Systems Security Professional, or CISSP. Mr. Kalka lives in Maryland with one great wife, two great kids, and spends his limited spare time as an unprofessional musician. Terry Kalka, welcome to the Cyber Coffee Hour.
Dr. Joseph J. Burt-Miller Jr.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Dr. Joseph J. Burt-Miller Jr., it is a pleasure to be in touch with you again after so many years.
Yeah, it's been a while, man.
It has.
But how are you? I mean, so well, for one, I have to say, hats off to you. I salute you because, of course, when I was at DC3, you're my direct supervisor, and now I heard through the grapevine moving up. I was like, okay, now he done took over now, so which is great, So I mean, but how have things been for you though? I mean, I know it's been a while since we really got to catch up.
Yeah, well, it's so I have been at DC3 for a little over 8 years, working as you knew me. I was the mission support division chief in the DICE, which meant I was responsible for, with our team, engaging the defense industrial base companies, communications, outreach, and event planning, as well as our internal process improvement and quality control work. Somewhere in the middle of the pandemic, I became the deputy director for the DICE. And then in 2022, I took an opportunity to do some other things within DC3. So I stepped outside of the DIB cybersecurity world and did a lot of work in terms of government partner engagement and strategic partner engagement. I helped develop DC3 strategic plan. I helped work on a number of sort of team building and cross-functional efforts to get to know DC3 better as a whole. And
Okay.
then about 2 years ago, I came back in as the director for the DICE. And everything has been very easy and smooth and no trouble ever since whatsoever.
So that I didn't know. So you left for a couple of years and then came back? Is that what
So I
do I have
stayed
that
in
right?
DC3, but I left DICE for about a year.
Oh, got
And
you.
that was something that the executive director at the time, Mr. Jude Sunderbrook, offered as kind of a career development opportunity.
Yeah.
And so I was very fortunate. I've been very fortunate to work with a number of really excellent and outstanding leaders in my career, and Mr. Sunderbrook is one of them. He gave me this opportunity to go try some other things, and I took advantage of that and learned a lot, and then came right back into Dibland.
Wow, look at that. No, that's amazing. No, that's really good. So, well, again, salute to you. I could wish you, continued success as you continue in your role. But yeah, and I guess for me, yeah, I've been staying. Well, of course, outside of everything that's happening right now, I'm sure everyone's well aware, so I don't need to harp on that. But outside of that, just really just staying focused with my developing my. So I have a cybersecurity certification group that I manage on Discord. So I've been doing that for a number of years.
Cool.
It's going through a bit of transition as I so that when I started that, it was more of I did it out of necessity, just trying to just do some study group with folks. At that point in time when I started, I was pursuing my PMP, and yeah, just found some folks, a couple of folks that we just got together and started studying together. And then we got to the point where we all passed the exam, and then it kind of just saw something. More people started joining, and it just really started to grow. So I guess something that started more out as a hobby per se, and then now I'm trying to really solidify it. So I've actually got a LLC behind it now. So just going through some work, and I think with this extra, I guess, time right now is
Hmm.
actually helped me to kind of focus more on that and really help develop that. So I guess there is some I guess some good in the midst of all this, but yeah, but that's where I've been at so far. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So, my first question to you, Terry, what was the pivotal moment that if you had in your career where a problem seemed impossible until a bit of caffeine and persistence helps you crack it wide open?
I thought a lot about this question, and I want to take it from a different angle. Caffeine and persistence are really important, but I have benefited in the big aha moments come from creative engagement with other people.
Mm,
And the sort of light bulb moments that have come up over the years have been from talking with and listening to, first of all, people who are smarter than me, but secondly, people who have other perspectives. And, I try to maintain a pretty big picture of things going in when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to the defense industry, when it comes to national defense. No big picture is too big, but there are people who have backgrounds that I don't. A real simple example is, although I have been working for the department now since 2011, I never served in the military. So
right,
I inevitably have a perspective that is not going to be the same as someone who is, let's say, a lifetime service member.
right,
And the aha moments, though, have to do with, I'd say, we talked about collaboration already a little bit. Like the aha moment that you can choose how you show up, and you can choose to be easy to work with, and you can choose to be open to people's suggestions,
right,
or you can choose not to. But the aha moment that really is a choice that you can make, even when you're in the middle of a very stressful, very uncertain environment. And it's not always easy. It's not easy for me. It takes some practice, but it is a choice you can make for how you want to show up and work with other people. And sort of realizing, like, yeah, I can actually choose to do that each day was a significant minute for me. The caffeine helps, but it's really learning from the folks I work with about how we do that.
right. No, I think that's very interesting perspective. I think even for me. in getting into leadership, I guess I'll get, and I'll just term that more as like professional leadership. So my first official supervisory role that I've earned here at the agency. So I'm currently serving as a division chief, and I've noticed a change going from my peers to now I'm their supervisor. So it does feel there's a bit of maybe weirdness, I guess, at first, because you're trying to overcome that, and now I'm there. Before, used to be able to hang out and have any type of conversation, but now it's a little bit different. So, and of course, and people who are on my team, have many more years of experience than I do, especially here at the agency. So it is a bit different, and but also I think one of the things that I've learned, going on, is realizing that I'm not going to have all the answers, but realizing that you 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 want to embolden, or look at your team members who's on your team, and realize what their strengths are and utilize that, and not to make sure that their voices are heard, and make sure they're catapulted, and not try to put anyone down or nothing like that. You want to make sure everyone gets that time to shine. And also, as we're all working towards that mission goal that we're all trying to work towards, that we all work together, create that chemistry, and make sure everyone feels respected and feel heard. But yeah, I definitely hear you on that.
I think it's about recognizing that people have a role to play, right?
Right.
So you may or may not, as a leader, you may or may not have more experience than the people you're leading, but the team needs a leader. There's someone to make decisions or sort of mediate between decisions, someone
Right.
who represents the team to other parts of the organization,
Yeah.
right? Someone who gathers the perspective from across the organization and brings that back to the team. Like that's a role. It's important to respect the people for the role that they hold and support them in that. And whether your role is as a team leader, a higher level supervisor, a director, a cyber threat analyst, like, everyone's got a role to play here on the team. And as long as you remember that, then it gets a little less awkward. It can be a shift to leading your peers, but it becomes about stepping into that role and holding the authority of that role, which is a little bit different from whatever you personally have attained for yourself.
Yeah. And I think that's it too. That is that mindset shift. Yeah, you're taking more so the person out of it, and really it's just about the role, the person who's
Hmm.
serving in that role, and having respect for that. So when we talk about roles, given your role in the DIB with defense contractors, if you could invent one, quote unquote magic wand for cybersecurity, something that would instantly fix a single problem for everyone, what would it do, and why?
I would wave the wand that brings everyone to an acceptable baseline of cybersecurity. For example, the
Mm.
department has rolled out now CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification.
Right.
And this has the attention of pretty much everybody I know in the defense industrial base, which it should. And it solidifies a baseline of requirements. And those requirements have been around for quite a while, but this CMMC program locks in the scope of the requirements and the process that the DoD will go through to validate that someone's meeting those requirements. Well, for some of our colleagues in industry, this is a big step, a long haul for them to get to the level of compliance they need to be. Now, that's okay. Like, we need this level of security. What worries me is that's a baseline. That's not even at the level of really trying to compete with or defend against our most advanced adversaries. So if I could wave my magic wand, I would get this basic step over. We're all there. And then
Right.
we can have the conversation about where the real advanced threats are coming from. For good or ill, it's taken us this long to get to a point where we are actually externally validating DIB company compliance with security requirements. I'd like to get us past that next couple of years so that we can be at that level together and then move on to the next thing.
I see what you're saying. So being able to make sure everyone is at the same starting line all together at the same point in time, then you're able to really do some, I'd say, I guess, meaningful work from that point on.
Well, sure. So if you think of a supply chain, a literal chain, right?
Right.
Your weakest link is the one that's going to break the chain. And we don't know where that link is necessarily. But if I
Mhm.
had assurance that all of the links were at a certain level, then I could move on with a degree of assurance. And so
Exactly.
this CMMC program, which is a good thing and really important, is going to get us to that point. I just want to wave the magic wand that says we're there.
Sense. So just switching gears a bit to your personal life, because I'm very interested, because you mentioned you're an unprofessional musician. So what's like one song that to you perfectly captures the chaos and harmony of a well-defended network?
The chaos and harmony of a well-defended network. There's a song called Frame by Frame by the band King Crimson.
King
And
Crimson. Okay.
King Crimson.
Oh, King. Okay, gotcha.
King, right? Um, I tend to gravitate towards music where there's a lot going on. And in King Crimson's music, there's a lot going on a lot of the time, but it's an interesting balance of, let's say, intense energy and some discipline to it. So
Okay.
in Frame by Frame, you have a number of things going on, and you have this very rigorous, kind of very hard to play guitar part that goes on and on and on throughout the song. And then you have another guitar player who's kind of much wilder, much more loose, splashing chords out. And then you hit a part where they synchronize together. And then there's a
Okay.
bit of a song. And the guitars are playing in 7. Now, if you don't know much about music, most music, we would count that in 3 or 4 or some variation of that.
Mhm.
Music in 7 is a lot less common in mainstream culture. These guys are playing in 7, while the drummer is doing something that makes it feel like a regular kind of 2-beat, 4-beat song.
Right.
And if that doesn't make sense, go listen to it, guys. Um, and it encapsulates this balance of strict accuracy and then sort of wild energy that goes on all at once. And when you get down to the basics of computing, you're still dealing with ones and zeros. Let's not talk about quantum computing. You're still dealing with ones and zeros,
Right.
but the way all that stuff starts to interact gets very complex very quickly.
See now, I've dabbled in music quite a bit. Grown up, I was in a band, so I
Hmm.
played my number of instruments. So in playing in 7, that's pretty fast. So you said playing in 7, and you said the drummers are going in 3 and 4.
So yeah, so if the guitar part is like
Oh, the guitar. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the drums, boom, psh, boom, psh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Wow.
7, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I just want to toot my own horn and say it took a little bit of guts to try to do that live on a podcast, but
No, you did. No,
I think I
that's a
got it
perfect example. Yeah.
right. So that even understanding and learning to do like count and tap that or count and snap it takes a little bit of practice. But that's sort of like there's a relationship, but you could also just sort of follow each part on its own. And I mean, cybersecurity is very much like that. There's the world of, let's say, DevSecOps, and there's a world of perimeter defense, and there's a world of enterprise security, and there's a world of running a business, right? We in the security field tend to focus on that and lose sight of the larger organization, larger mission, or larger business that we're supporting. But that's going on too. And so everything's happening in all of these layers, and you can focus, and sometimes you have to focus on different parts of it. But it's also important not to lose sight of the whole.
Well said. Well said.
And even in the lyrics to this song, there's a line about death by drowning in your own analysis,
Okay.
right?
I have to look him up. I have to look that up and listen to a couple of tracks. I have not heard of this artist, so I'm quite intrigued to listen to that. So and I guess maybe just a quick follow up. Is there like a um maybe like maybe a theme song or maybe like a go to playlist you have like when you really get into your work? Like is there certain songs like is your go to that should push you in that mode?
The music that sort of stimulates thinking and good work for me is a certain type of jazz music. And
Okay.
when I was in my 20s, back in the late 20th, there was a moment in about 1998, I believe, where I said, I'm done with pop culture. What was going on was not working for me.
Mm,
I'm going to go look at this other thing. And they were putting out these box sets of Miles Davis, like capturing different eras of his career.
yeah.
And so Miles is someone like for 40 years, for 50 years nearly, he's on the cutting edge of what's changing in music.
Right.
And so he had this quintet from about 1965 to 68 with Tony Williams on drums, Ron Carter on bass, Herbie Hancock on piano, and Wayne Shorter on saxophone. And they did some incredible things, mostly acoustic. Near the end of this is when he started to bring in a few electric instruments, and it's it's melodic and it's tuneful, but there's also some abstraction to it, and there's some experimentation with form and structure, and there's a lot of improvisation. So there's a record of that band made called Miles Smiles, where literally like you can hear it's the first take and the drums start going and the horn starts and stops and the
Right.
drums keep going and then the horn starts again. Like Miles didn't even care if it was the first take. Like he thought the energy was there and it felt good and they were just going to go with it. So Miles Davis Quintet 1965 to 1968. I know that sounds really weirdly precise, but that's the title of the box set. And that's like a good 6-7 hours of music that'll put me in that space.
I've yeah, for me, like when I'm knee deep in work and trying to get in that mode, I do listen a bit of jazz. Yeah, Miles Davis, John Coltrane.
Mhm.
Actually, I do probably like a mix. I find like a good Spotify mix where to kind of blend the two. They blend a couple of their albums together. And I
Yeah.
listen to that. Sam Cooke. Of course, I love my Marvin Gaye. Yeah, I just try to kind of mix that all in because like some music um it can more or less distract you from the work,
Right.
so it's kind of counterproductive because you end up finding yourself singing the song as opposed to doing the work he's trying to do. But no, like I find jazz or classical music, I think that's like a good room background music per se.
Hmm.
But it helps me. It's something to fill the void, but it also just keeps me focused on what I'm trying to do. So, but yeah, we have Terry Kalka here on the Cyber Coffee Hour as we part of the Alive Podcast Network. As we get into the back half of our episode here, we'll learn a little bit more about Terry, and then we'll learn about some of the more things he likes to do in his spare time as well. But so I guess just start off, Terry. Could you tell us about one of the most exciting or impactful projects DC3 is currently working on to improve cybersecurity for the defense industrial base?
One of the things that we've been able to do in the last 12 months is, frankly, we've gotten a lot better at measuring the impact that we have in terms of our defensive activities and our ability to spot malicious activity on div networks. So I'll give you an example of why this was so hard is, our foundation is sharing cyber threat indicators with industry. And
Right.
we've pumped out hundreds and thousands. It's like the McDonald's sign, millions and billions served. Like,
Right.
and so the question is, okay, you pumped out hundreds of thousands of indicators. How many of those are actually being targeted by the adversary? Like, how many of those are hitting DIB networks and being defended against?
Right.
And that's been hard to measure because like no one's going to take the time to say, "Hey, you sent us this thing and we put it in our firewall and now it's blocked." And that's too trivial of a thing for the average network defender to take the time to do for us. A couple of years ago, though, we rolled out what we call DICE Cubed, which is DCISE and a little superscript 3.
Okay.
And what that does is it analyzes firewall logs from DIB companies. We have about 350 firewall logs that we're gathering daily from the DIB. With room to grow, listeners.
Mhm.
What that has allowed us to do, among many other things, right? Well, first of all, it allows us to threat hunt in a way that we weren't able to do before. But secondly, it allows us to go back and see, okay, out of all the stuff we send out, first of all, how much of that is being actively targeted? And secondly, is it really anything you wouldn't get from anywhere else? So we looked at all of our calendar 2024 data, and we found that about 49% of our indicators were being targeted continuously or frequently across the DIB. So about half of the stuff we put out, half of it's like one-off, but the other half is definitely active, targeted IPs and other indicators from the adversary. So, okay, is that good or bad? It's hard to know with one metric, but that's a good starting point. The thing I'm really proud of, though, Joseph, that our team has done is that our uniqueness is up over 95%, which means 95% of the defensive data we're putting out, you can't get from a commercial threat feed. It's
Okay.
not coming from Google. It's not coming from Microsoft. It's coming from our government and industry sources. That really is unique to what DC3 offers. And our ability, from a leadership perspective, our ability to even measure that is incredibly helpful. But secondly, in terms of impact, we're serving up something that you literally can't pay for.
Hmm.
The other piece, as I mentioned, is the threat hunting. So we have that. We also have a capability called Ensite. That's ENSITE, which is essentially a sensor program that we are operating across a number of DIB networks. We have found and been able to stop exfiltration while it's taking place, and in one case at least, stop a ransomware actor from triggering their own stuff. We saw an actor setting up on a Friday. We knew that this is an actor that usually likes to set things up over the weekend and pull the trigger so that when you come in on Monday, it's, the Mondayest Monday ever, right? So we saw them setting up on Friday where we thought, well, let's call the company.
Yeah.
And is a fairly significant research organization within the defense industrial base. We called them up, sent them our info. They found the activity, blocked it, and they had no ransomware event.
Wow.
So,
So
that's pretty awesome. I'm pretty happy with that.
no, no, that's pretty amazing. So you're able to get ahead of potential pretty much detrimental action that could have happened.
I mean, that was no kidding left of boom.
Right.
And usually we'll see it after boom or in the middle of the boom.
Right.
To get truly left and to know for sure that you actually stopped it that far in advance is pretty powerful.
Yeah. And save a lot of headache too, be able to get ahead of it. And now as you mentioned, you're not at the end where you're being more reactive. Now there's more of a proactive approach, and you're able to really add some value, provide some value to organizations to say, hey, we're seeing this, we're monitoring this, we need to take action before we have a big problem on our hands. So that's pretty cool. So you mentioned so two products per se, Dice Cubed and Insight.
Hmm.
Those are the two latest things. Okay.
I'll throw one more in that has been very useful. So before I even came to DC3, DoD had started its vulnerability disclosure program and decided to put that in DC3. And that is where we work with white hackers, researchers,
Right.
to probe the DoD infrastructure, all the public infrastructure, and find vulnerabilities and report them to us so we can close them out. A couple of years ago, we extended that to the DIB. So we run a DIB vulnerability disclosure program. where we have a team of researchers who are looking at public-facing infrastructure in the DIB, finding vulnerabilities, they report them to us. We work with the company to then mitigate and close out those vulnerabilities. Now, the value of that is pretty easy to detect because, fortunately, IBM, they do a report every year about the cost of data breaches. And this year, the average cost of a data breach globally across organizations globally is $4.2 million per breach.
Wow.
The cost for U.S. organizations is $10.22 million, according to IBM. So if we find and fix 10 vulnerabilities, we have just saved industry and the taxpayer at least $100 million.
Right.
Right. Now scale that out. If we're able to close out, let's say 500 vulnerabilities, now you're up at like, what did I say? 510. Now you're up in many, many figures.
Right.
And even if not every one of those was going to get exploited, even if 10% of them was going to get exploited only, you're still talking about tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in cost avoidance.
That's big. That's nothing to sneeze at. I mean,
Not at all. Not at all.
That's
It's
a
a
big
very
deal.
powerful thing. So I would want to give that a shout out as well as a fair. And there is, by the way, DIB partners. There is room to join the DIB VDP as well. So
All right. You hear that,
contact
partners?
us.
Yeah, DC3 is open, so hit them up.
Mhm. Yep.
So as we mentioned about the DIB, the DIB is a massive ecosystem. So what's one of the biggest challenges in getting over 1,300 defense contractors to collaborate on threat intelligence, and what's a success story that proves this collaboration is working?
So, a couple of challenges. One is that 1,300 is not at all even a fraction. It is a fraction, technically. It's a very small
Mm.
fraction of the total number of companies in the defense ecosystem. And I'm glad you brought up that word ecosystem because I really like that. I've been borrowing that from the 2022 National Defense Strategy, where the policy writers describe the defense ecosystem, which includes the DIB, it includes government, and it includes other organizations, whether those are academic facilities like university affiliated research centers and other entities that may not be part of your traditional defense industrial base, but are part of the overall supply chain to the DoD.
Right.
So the challenge of the defense ecosystem, first of all, it's massive.
Yeah.
Secondly, it consists of very, very large companies whose names we all know with profits, revenue in billions and billions of dollars. And it consists of a lot of very, very small companies whose names we mostly don't know, whose profits are going to be less and whose area of focus is going to be a lot less, and they are going to be less equipped to defend themselves. So how do I bring value? How do we in DC3 bring value across that entire spectrum of the defense industrial base? And I think the quick answer is there isn't a single answer to that. The needs of what a large prime company is looking for from us is going to be quite different from what a small organization is going to be looking for from us. So our job is to find balance and make sure that we are supporting where we can as well as we can. I am very lucky that DICE has built a degree of trust within the industry and that there are things organizations will share with us they might not share elsewhere.
Right.
And so you asked for an example of that successful collaboration. You may remember some vulnerabilities around Atlassian Confluence about 2 years ago
Mhm.
became quite public and very problematic. There are details to this that I can't describe in the podcast, but I can tell
Of
you
course.
that this goes back to the dice cubed capability. We detected some malicious traffic related to Confluence on a DIB entity's network. We were able to proactively reach out and get in touch with that entity. We were able to talk their cyber analysts through what we saw, and then they found it, and they were able to stop the exfil. So bad news, a certain amount of data walked out the door. Good news, it wasn't all the data. And they were very grateful and responsive, and they started sharing indicators back with us over and above what I would say was in their mandatory requirement,
Right.
because they knew that that data was going to help us share and defend other companies in industry. And we were able to provide that data back up to the defenders of the DoD information network. What's now DCDC at the time was Joint Force Headquarters DoD.
Right.
And they were able to do some defensive maneuvering on the DoD as well, and then provide lessons learned back to us that we shared with industry. So it was a perfect virtuous circle of information sharing from industry, well, starting with government back to industry, industry back up to DC3, DC3 to the DoD, and back and forth like that for the mutual benefit of all.
And I no, I thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a perfect example of how, for one, I guess how important it is to have this reputation within the industry, which enables you to do this work. Well, not you per se, but I mean as far as the DC3 as a whole, or the DIB as a whole, to be able to gain that trust amongst others and be able to carry out that work. So I think that's very important, and it shows how critical it is to get that established. So Terry, so most people, get into cybersecurity because of a piece of technology, like a cool gadget, a new piece of software. But your journey started differently. You said your interest, was sparked when an organization you work for was hacked. So could you take us back, to that day and share how that moment ignited your passion for a career in cyber defense?
Yeah, that day actually was almost exactly 13 years ago. Um,
Oh wow, okay.
so at that time, I was working for the U.S. Army Communications Electronics Command. I was a database administrator and a kind of a software developer. And we were working on business systems. So, how does this organization track its money? How does it manage its people from a human resources perspective? Managing contracts, like it's all the business end of things, right? And I'd started with that organization as a contractor, and I'd made the switch to become a Department of the Army civilian. And just after the Indigenous Peoples Day / Columbus Day weekend, I came into work. I guess it would be Tuesday. And everything our team had worked on for about 6 years was shut down and offline.
Oh no. Wow.
So that's an interesting day.
Yeah.
And we found out that the reason for the shutdown was that there had been an intrusion and an exfiltration of data over the weekend. And the main reason it got caught was that, it was a holiday weekend and there was way too much traffic on the wire for that to be a normal thing. So here's where we were with incident response, at least from where I sat in 2012. Army CID came in and the FBI came in and they took our servers, right? There's no cloud here, it's just physical servers.
Right.
And we said, oh, what happened? Like, well, we don't know, and we're not going to comment on an ongoing investigation.
Okay.
When do we get this? Can we get the servers back? No, probably not. Like, what are we supposed to do? Like, well, that's your problem. So we were
Wow.
kind of in a very difficult state. And I was someone who had, been with the organization for a long time, and I knew how things were connected on the back end. And so we were starting to piece together, based on the little bit of information we had, what was likely impacted and what likely was not impacted. Over time, we started to get little hints from the investigation. So we knew at some point, we knew that the adversary had used a cold fusion based tool to do the intrusion. Well, all right, if they used that, then they probably saw cold fusion data sources. They probably did not see our .NET data sources. This is like very basic, incident response that we didn't even know was incident response. We're just trying to make our best guess based on the limited information about what happened.
Right.
That led us to a conclusion that there was a certain amount of PII that had been impacted. And so that led to figuring out how to buy credit monitoring for 36,000 people and then sending letters to 36,000 people Now, I don't know how many of you or your listeners have ever attempted to do a mail merge in Microsoft Word, but if you have a mailing list of names and addresses and you have a form letter and you
Right.
try to put those together, after about 500, Word would just sort of freeze up.
Yeah.
So we were doing batches of them to get to 36,000.
Jeez.
And that led to, of course, a lot of public relations and stuff that was over my pay grade, fortunately. I was doing the analysis and sort of figuring that out. So we kind of lived through that. And then we were like, well, okay, we have to get back into business here. How do we stand everything back up
Right.
in a way that lets us know with reasonable certainty that the data was not manipulated and that there was not malicious code sitting in there, et cetera. So I was part of the team that had to figure that out. And we put together this plan. We brought things back online. And after that, they looked at me and said, well, you should probably be in cybersecurity.
Oh wow.
So I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. So that was in 2013. And I became, at the time, the term was an information assurance manager,
Yeah.
something like that. And very shortly after that, we switched over to cybersecurity, and I became more focused on, firstly, just secure development, right? I was working in a development shop. No one had given us security requirements. No one,
Wow.
I would say no one. Many of the developers I worked with had never even explored, like, well, what would it be like to look at the OWASP top 10 and
Yeah.
try to write a program that incorporated those recommendations. Like, that's how we were. And I know we are not unique in that respect, especially that long ago. And from there, I was moved into the G6, the CIO office for that command.
Okay.
And I was doing very checkbox compliance focused cybersecurity,
Mm.
ATOs and risk management framework and 2875 forms. And I was like, this can't be what we mean by cybersecurity. Like, this is
Right.
not.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in terms of culture, that's what a lot of people meant by cybersecurity in those days. And I got a really, really unique opportunity to work on a special team reporting directly to the two-star commander to sort of build a framework around cybersecurity across this command. This is the Communications Electronics Command, something like 8,000 people globally doing sustainment and maintenance of communications and electronic systems. You bet there's a
Yeah.
lot of cyber activity going on around there. So
Right.
what is it? How do we align it to Army cyber priorities? How do we get at defense of critical systems? How do we define what our most critical systems are? Those are the kinds of things this task force was charged to go look at, and I had the opportunity to work there and get some interesting experience, like watching senior levels of leadership operate. And
No,
that really is what launched me into cybersecurity as a long-time professional choice.
I think that's a great launching pad into it because you just get right into it, going from that hacking incident, and then kind of just took you to different opportunities from there. So I guess I'm just curious, like if it wasn't for that moment, was I know back then it was termed more information assurance, but as we know today is cybersecurity. But if it wasn't for that moment, what was cybersecurity even on your radar at that point in time, or?
I think the big problems I was trying to work at that time were more application development and architecture. I would not describe myself as an architect, but that was probably where my career was going. Now,
Gotcha.
with the benefit of hindsight, like, at some point that would have bumped into security,
Yeah.
uh, and that would need to be a part of it, hopefully. But I would still be in the IT field, I'm sure, and I would
Yeah.
still be at some degree of technical expertise. But the security focus was one thing, and then coming to DC3 as I did in 2017 to be intensely focused on this large conglomerate of the defense industrial base, that was new territory for me at the time.
Gotcha. Okay. So, Terry, we know you have a very interesting background. So you said you didn't follow a traditional path into cyber, despite holding a bachelor's degree in music. Could you tell us about maybe the biggest challenge you face coming into this field from the outside, and how that unique perspective has actually become a strength for you?
Sure. So the challenge is, I don't know that the challenge is cyber focused as much as it is working in cyber in a very specific environment, which is the Department of Defense or Department of
Hmm.
War, right? So,
Right.
like I said at the beginning of our talk, I did not have military experience. The closest I ever came to military life was being in the marching band. Right.
Right.
So I can march in formation. I
Yeah.
play the tuba. I can carry large pieces of metal with me. That's as far as it goes, right? Which is not super
Right.
far. Um, and so there have been times in my career where I've had to really listen when I wanted to speak, because there are cultural aspects of working in the Department of Defense. There are cultural aspects of the Army versus the Air Force. There are cultural elements for people who have been born and bred into this environment.
Hmm.
And when you work with someone who rose to the level of colonel or general and then retired and now they're in the defense industrial base, they have a history that I don't have. And they have a
Right.
shared experience that I don't have. And navigating that was a challenge. It's less so now. I've been in the kind of the mix long enough. I'm not going to toss out a lot of jargon that I didn't earn the right to use, but I know what people are talking about.
Right.
But even then, so, I spent several years as an Army contractor and Army civilian. I began to get comfortable with Army tech terminology. I went to DC3, which is an Air Force organization, and the services use different terms for the same thing.
Yeah.
So in the Army, I had a major command or MACOM. I go to the Air Force, it's a MAGCOM.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they look at you like you're an idiot if you say MACOM, right? Do
Right.
you capitalize GEN in general, or do you do a capital G and lowercase en? Those things matter in different services, right?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, I find myself from time to time wishing I had more of a direct background, just to be able to sort of speak the language a little more easily. What I bring though from that, having had a music degree, having really lucked into an IT career. My first job in IT was training people to use computers.
Mm.
This had not a whole lot to do with my technical knowledge. It had to do with my ability to sort of stand in front of a room and present information,
Okay.
right? It was more of a public speaking skill than a technology skill.
Still
I,
a great
I
quality to have, though. Still a great
it's an
attribute.
incredibly useful attribute to have. But I'm a big believer in transferable skills. So, what did I do as a music major? One of the things I had to do was look at large, complex pieces of music, listen to them, and analyze them, and figure out what part went where and how this relates to that, and this is transformed, it's just backwards, and this is transformed, it's just upside down, and this is the same thing as that, but in a different key. That's analysis.
Right.
And if you take that mindset and apply it to something else, you can be analytic about other things. You can be analytic about a policy. You can be analytic about a cyber threat report. You can have that mindset of trying to find the key elements and how they relate to each other and look for connections that maybe aren't obvious. And that's just one example of a widely transferable skill, right?
Right.
The whole thing of standing in front of a room and to a degree being able to perform. Like, I have some performance chops. I'm not afraid to improvise. Like, there's stuff that you can do musically that if you are open-minded enough, you can apply to other walks of life.
I think that is great, especially for people to know, because I think a lot of people they count themselves out because they feel that because they don't have maybe a strong IT background, or they don't know enough. They're like, oh man, I don't think I can get into cyber because I don't do this, or I'm not in it long enough, or whatever the case is. People try to, well, people will, like I said, they'll count themselves out because of that. And I think that that could be the first thing from the truth. Like, people come from many different backgrounds. There's, as you mentioned, a lot of transferable skills that can be applied within the field of cyber that can be very useful and help really catapult your career. And I just think people need to know that, just because maybe you worked as a nurse or whatever, I'm just throwing different roles out there, but there are different skills that you had to do within those roles that can be transferred once you get into cyber. So I think that's great for people to know.
I think it's really important. I think, cybersecurity is a field that is still inventing itself. I was thinking about, when you and I worked together, you were still working on your PhD. I have a bachelor's in music. I did eventually earn a master's degree, much more closely related to my professional life.
Mhm.
But the joke I tell is that, when I got my bachelor's degree, I went to what is now one of the top cyber schools in the country, but nobody had invented cybersecurity.
Mm,
So I
yeah.
studied music instead, right? Which is, it's not really how that worked out. But, you know, even when I was looking to get a master's degree, when I finally said, okay, I should go do this, finding a master's program focused on cybersecurity was still a very rare thing.
Yeah.
This was like 2013 or so. So the idea that you can now go to college and actually study this is still fairly new. Unlike, I don't know, science and mathematics and engineering and public policy and music, right? There are
Hmm.
degree programs that's been a field of academic study for centuries. So to work with information security and cybersecurity, you're in a field that is still evolving, and there's a lot you can do without formal degree based training. There's a lot you can do even if you don't have certificates. There's a lot you can do if you're willing to take what you've learned already in your life and figure out new ways to apply it.
Exactly. Absolutely. Um, yeah, and as you mentioned, yeah, when I started, I still recall, like, when I was looking to start my doctoral program. Yeah, there weren't many schools at that time. Now, fast forward to now, there's many more schools that are offering cybersecurity focused degrees, even at the doctorate level now.
Right.
But back then there weren't many. So, as you mentioned, yeah, it was still developing, still evolving at that point in time. I think a lot of people were still trying to grasp what that would look like within I guess, within a curriculum. So, yeah, it is amazing to see how it is, cybersecurity has evolved. I even think of like WGU, I think they do a great job of infusing certifications within their curriculum. So by the time you do graduate, you have a number of certs already under your belt,
Right.
on top of the degree as well. So I think that's a great model. But yeah, we're going to see many more changes. It's going to see just how much more as time continues to go on. We see cybersecurity continue to evolve in terms of like cybersecurity education. We're going to see that really evolve and really take form. So Terry, so since this is the Cyber Coffee Hour, so we have to ask you the most important question. So you told us you're a sucker for vanilla latte, a classic with a little something extra. Is there a fundamental cybersecurity best practice or principle that to you is like that vanilla latte? Simple, reliable thing that's also the key to getting through the most complex challenges of your day.
Yes, and it's not necessarily strictly security
Mm,
focused. It's not a technical solution. It's not a control from a NIST document. It is the importance of responding and not reacting to a new bit of information.
mm,
Um, because of the nature of our work, it's easy to be shocked by a new piece of information. This week, well, what's Sunday? So last week, right? F5 announced that they had a massive supply chain problem, and the repercussions of that are going to be with us for a long time. And I'm not picking on F5 in particular, other than that was a recent, like, wow, that's a big deal. A lot of cyber threat analysts that I know will jump to conclusions from that and maybe start to panic about what it could mean, what the implications are, and what we have to do. And the environment we're in is complex enough that panicked reaction almost never is the right answer,
Mhm.
right? And the folks that, sometimes you have to move very quickly. Sometimes you have to think very quickly. Sometimes you have to take action, and that's important. But there's also times where you have information that you really just sort of need to sit and digest for a while. One of the most impactful lessons for me, if I go back to that story about the PII and the 36,000 people, there was a point at which we thought that maybe that number was orders of magnitude larger. We
Mhm.
thought maybe it might have been millions of people. And it turned out not to be the case. But I had to go to my boss and say, hey, there's a possibility that it's not 36,000. There's a possibility that it's, 1 to 2 million. And he sat there at his desk. He just kind of said, I'm just going to sit here and process that for a while. And he didn't like stand up and panic. He didn't shout. He didn't dash off an email immediately. And that was an early example in my career of like, okay, even if it's true, even if it's tremendously disastrous news, you've got to take a thoughtful approach to how you're going to tackle a large problem. And that stayed with me. And that's one really good example. So my recommendation when confronted with really like world changing news, assuming nothing is on fire at the moment, right? We're not talking about safety,
Right.
physical safety to people,
Yeah,
right?
human safety, right?
Like
Yeah.
this is like, oh gosh, something bad really happened and it's not a simple fix. It's not a simple problem. Breathe, sense your feet on the floor, maybe sit down with a nice latte and think through it for a bit.
And that could be hard to do. I think that practice alone is gonna take practice. Because yeah, I think maybe human nature. Yeah, when something is going awry, yeah, the first thing you want to do is try to respond or be frantic, and maybe and doing so, you may respond in an incorrect manner because you're trying to be so quick and not really thinking it through and really processing, as you said, processing all the information and then really have a well calculated response. So
And
I
that's
see.
where
No,
so
sorry, good.
that's where to go back to our leadership conversation, right?
Right.
The role of the leader might be to be the person in the room who is not freaking out.
Mm,
Right. The
yeah.
role of like I joke about this, but it's also true. Like I have people on my team, if they're worried about something, I don't worry about it because they're doing the worrying for us.
Right.
Now it also means if my trusted teammate is worried, they're going to work and fix the problem. So I don't have to worry. I don't have to be stressed about it. Is it important? Of course. Does it have my attention and concern? Certainly. But if she's worried, I know she's going to go tackle the problem as well as anybody could. So I don't have to engage in sort of the physical and emotional stress because
Right.
she's got that part covered.
Right.
I can trust that that's happening and I can focus on some other thing or some other part of the same problem.
And
And it is hard. It can
yeah.
be, and sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes I get upset like everybody else. I am a human being, I think. But it really is like it's very valuable to be the person in the room who is, to the extent that you can, breathing and think like watching others and listening, not being passive,
Right.
but also not jumping at the next thing just because you feel like you have to do something.
No, I think that's very important because I think as a leader, you want to make sure you set the tone. And I think about it, if I see my leadership, kind of just freaking out or crashing out about something, that's going to make me, that doesn't help. That doesn't help me respond. So,
100%.
if you're able to serve as that rock for your organization or for your team, it's not to say that you don't feel it. Maybe in your private moments, kind of let it out, but amongst the team, you want to make sure that you show that maybe call it sign of strength, if you will, but to really kind of hold everything together as best as you can, so that way it doesn't allow the rest of your team to have, because they're already dealing, as you mentioned, they may be already stressed out about it. We don't need to add on to it or make exacerbate it.
Yeah.
So Terry, as we wrap up our conversation here on the Cyber Coffee Hour, so let's just talk about what keeps you going when you're not in front of a computer. Like, what's say, and I may know the answer to this already, but just curious, like, what's a hobby or interest outside of cyber that helps you recharge and maintain a fresh perspective?
Um, Lately, I've actually been spending a lot of time reading.
Okay.
Right. Certainly, I like to play some music, but the time I have to focus on that has been pretty limited lately.
Mm,
So really, like, I have a couple of books going. They're all kind of nerdy in their own way. I'm a deep Lord of the Rings Tolkien nerd, so
okay.
I'm reading like it's called the History of Middle Earth. It's like the multi-volume set of his writings that was put together after he died and shows the evolution and development of this world that he built over decades.
Right.
The other book I will recommend that I just picked up at a conference is The Art and Science of Meta War. That's Metawar, Meta War, by a man
Art
named
sense of
Win
middle.
Schwartau, who's been in the national security and cybersecurity business for many decades. And he's looking at where we are today with the amount of information coming in, with the amount of influence that social media has, with the ability to manipulate the information environment that we're in and what the impacts of that are, and hopefully how to defend ourselves from that kind of manipulation. I can't tell you what those are because I haven't gotten that far in the book yet.
Right.
There's
Okay.
that, and then there are some musical pieces I've been spending some time with. Kind of similar to the King Crimson idea in that there's multiple things going on, but the pieces are a little bit more meditative and reflective.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's the music of a Swiss musician named Nick Bartsch, Bartschch, and he brands his music as ritual groove music, which I fell in love with that term the minute I saw it. Like
Okay.
if you name your art ritual groove music,
Yeah.
you can take all my money. Here it
Right.
is. I want it all. And so some
Yeah.
of his music is now like been transcribed as sheet music, and I can sort of fake my way through it on the piano, and that's very rewarding.
Wow. That's
Drives
awesome.
my family crazy, but I enjoy it.
That's good. That's good. I mean, everyone needs an outlet, especially from the stresses of work. So I think that's amazing. You find that, of course, through reading, but also with your music as well. So I think that's pretty cool. So Terry, it's been really great for one to catch up again after so many years, but also just to have you here on the Cyber Coffee Hour. So before we let you go, is there anything you just want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I'll share with our listeners. I think looking at the big picture and looking at the context that you're working in is really important. So we've talked about analysis and we've talked about focusing on very specific things, but in terms of understanding and in terms of just professional development, look at what your boss is thinking about and look at what their boss is thinking about and look at maybe what their boss is thinking about. Or if it's not a hierarchical situation, just take the time to get the perspective of people 1 to 2 to 3 degrees removed from where you are, so that you begin to build this bigger picture and understand the context that you're working in. It's going to change what you do. It's going to make you better. It's going to make you more effective in terms of your stakeholders, because you're
Right.
going to start to understand how what you do really meets the needs of other people, or maybe it doesn't meet their needs and you need to change how you're doing something.
Right.
But don't let yourself get stuck on, this is what I do, this is how I do it, and it's great, and I'm not going to change anything ever.
Right.
That's that's a trap. The world is changing too quickly for that. But rather than change things just to change them, even in an industry full of introverts, you can still like start to think through what other people are thinking about and what other people are looking at, and let that influence how you do what you do.
I think that's great. I think that helps where, I think some folks where they may lose like their motivation or maybe not understand their true purpose at work, but be able to kind of think like that, how what you do fits in the entire puzzle, in the entire big puzzle. That changes your perspective and your mindset, like, and maybe help motivate you and also, it increase, as you mentioned, like your effectiveness within the role at work that you do, um, to do more meaningful work and understanding like, yeah, what I'm doing is just not just going to a black hole, but it's actually working towards this end goal. And I think a lot of people understand that. Um, and also too, I think sometimes even talking to your leadership to gain that knowledge, I think there's a bit of responsibility on the leadership side as well to make sure that people know where they are amongst the entire puzzle, so that way they like I said, they feel more uh, engaged, they're motivated. They may take their work more seriously, because they know what they're doing is contributing to this. Um, but no, I think that's perfect advice, and I hope that helps folks who are maybe in that position where they may not know what their true purpose is, and kind of, as you mentioned, kind of just maintain that mindset to understand what it is, or maybe have that conversation with your leadership so you can understand what it is, where you're at. So, but thank you for that. So that's a wrap on another episode of the Cyber Coffee Hour, part of the Alive Podcast Network. We hope you enjoyed our chat with Terry Kalka. Don't forget, you can find more amazing shows like ours on the Alive Podcast Network app. If you'd like to show your support and keep the coffee brewing, you can contribute to the cause by checking out our link tree and donating to our Buy Me a Coffee platform. A huge thank you to all of our listeners. So please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our show. So until next time, stay safe out there and keep brewing. All right, that's it. It's a wrap. We out of here. Peace.